Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Safe Space session today. The purpose of these sessions is to capture conversations that highlight the four barriers around prevention of child sexual abuse, namely denial, silence, shame, and stigma. Through these real life conversations with interviewees, we seek to understand the prevalence of child sexual abuse and gender based violence within a family unit and how it is blatantly ignored and silenced for various reasons. It could range from ignorance to hesitation. All this and more is what we'll be discussing today in our conversation with our guests. I'd like to welcome Ms. Nikita Sulay. Nikita is an RCI licensed psychologist practicing in Mumbai, a clinical psychologist, and she has more than 6 years of experience. She's worked with multiple populations, I'd like to say psychiatry, child, adolescents, I think even geriatric populations. And she practices different therapy modalities like CBT, DBT, solution focused, and even psychotherapy. And on the side, she likes to trek and read, and she calls herself somebody who strives to make a safe space for all of her clients. But I'll let her tell you more about herself. Welcome, Nikita, to this safe space session.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vaishali, for having me today. And I hope we can make a safe space for both of us today and for our listeners session. Probably will listen to this at a later point as well. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
inviting me.
yeah. Thank you for joining us. So, Nikita, to start with, what does a safe space mean to you, and what do you mean when you say that you'd like to create it for your clients?
All right. So when I look at safe space, first of all, it's a great initiative that's actually has undertaken with creating safe spaces for children, for individuals in their homes. I think that's a great initiative. And when I look at the concept of safe space, right, I think this is a very, very important concept when it comes to psychotherapy. As a psychologist, I think that is something that each psychologist strives to achieve, to create that space. So when I talk about space, it means, in two aspects. One is the physical space, the kind of room setting that there is, right? There's nothing too jarring about it, nothing too triggering about it. There's a comfort that one experiences when they enter into a therapy room. We call them those vibes of a room. So, the physical space again needs to be safe. And second, I think more importantly, is the interpersonal space between two people. So that is, a safe space that I really consider that one needs to create, wherein there needs to it needs to be created from a space of a non-judgmental attitude, a space of open-mindedness where anybody can come and speak what they want to speak without feeling judged or feeling that this person is probably creating a bias or is looking at me in a different lens, because people come with a lot of different stories and a lot of uncomfortable details to talk about, right? um, Majorly, I would say that a safe space is a space where there is no harm, there's no exploitation of a person. um, the person is seen just the way they are, and at the same time accepted the way they are from a very non-judgmental attitude. There's protection from physical, from emotional, from psychological, from spiritual, all kinds of health and well-being in that sense. So for me, that is what a safe space would look like, where you feel
And
comfortable, I feel comfortable, and kind of can share that communication more effectively.
so, like a very comfortable, clear communicator space that just sets the vibe for the child or anybody you're working with, basically. Do you think you had that kind of a
Absolutely.
space growing up? I mean, it's very easy to talk about it now that we're an
Absolutely.
adult, we're psychologists, but
Yeah.
as a child, did you have that space?
I think yes, I mean, the kind of family that, touch wood I grew up in, there's always been that safe space that was created from parents, and there was an open communication that was there, a lot of autonomy in terms of decision making. There's also conversation, surprisingly, around mental health in the house as well, where there was a space to talk about any kind of issues at home. So again, I think that kind of a space really makes a lot of difference, for children especially, to kind of speak what they want to talk about, or the kind of issues they're facing at school, or maybe, with friends, to kind of have that open communication with parents or with siblings or at home.
So, do you see communication as a major barrier? Because you said, like, when you were a child, you had a very open space, a lot of autonomy. But then, as a psychologist now, you see that,
Yeah.
that's the sort of space you want to create. So, do you think that is a major barrier?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, when it comes to like in general people,
Yeah.
yeah, I do see that in a lot of homes, especially, with a lot of dysfunctional families, we generally see communication to be a major, major barrier. Where children don't have a say, children don't have a space to go to, a person to go to, and hence they, can get into like either two states that we see them in, right? One is internalization, where they completely like get into a shell and will not come out from there. So, a child who's gone through something difficult, could probably get into a shell, will not talk to people, will get withdrawn. Or the second aspect is they may get very externalized, right? They may get very aggressive, they throw tantrums, they show disobedience at school, and these kind of behaviors, the problem behaviors, and usually these children are then labeled as problem children or problem child, and but the underlying issue is probably the environment that we need to like look into really.
Okay. So, then we have a question from a viewer at this point, where they say, you've spoken about how it is for a
Mm-hmm.
child. But I'm a parent, and how do I approach it? How do I be non-judgmental? How do I create this open space for my child?
I think number one is sometimes when you're working with somebody, right, we need to like let the guard of a power dynamic a bit down. We need to come a little more at a level, come to a much more empathetic space. Let's say if a child is behaving in a certain way, right, understanding where that behavior is coming from, why that behavior is coming from, and then being able to come to that level and speak to the child in the way that the child would understand in a lot of ways. So that power dynamic somewhere needs to like reduce a bit there. At the second, at the same time, also, being able to understand that maybe in that emotional space is not where the child's logical brain is active. We first need to let the emotions settle in, and then maybe find a space to talk about what went wrong, or how do we analyze the situation differently. And I think the third is, just being approachable uh, most of the times, where the child at least knows that, okay, this is a person I can go and, talk to, vent out to, share my concern with, right?
Okay.
And fourth is, I think, teaching children emotional language, in terms of like teaching them how to say things. A lot of times children don't know how to express what has happened, right? So and that happens through modeling. If parents are able to model that behavior, then children also learn that very quickly. So being able to, speak through emotional language as well.
I think that's perfect what you said. We call it a rights-based language here, where we say teaching them the right word to be able to
Mhm.
express exactly what's going on. Once
Yeah.
that becomes a norm, it becomes easier for them to open up. And even power
Yeah.
dynamic brings us to what we talk about mostly at Sakshi, which is equality. Equality is where we want to bring everybody to the same level in life, where they're able to gain the same opportunities, they're able to do the same things as somebody else. Do you think we have equality, and what has your experience of equality been?
Equality again is a very broad uh, term, when we look at it, right? Uh, I don't think we live in an equal world. Let's put it out there, fair and square, that each person has their own struggles. And I don't think an equal world is, I mean, it can't be, rather, it's very difficult to achieve, something like that. And we all start from different socioeconomic backgrounds. We start from different parenting patterns, different families that we are born into, different kind of cultures. So, everywhere gender issues are again, again, each culture will be so different, the way they look at gender, the way they look at, economics, the way they look at decision making. So again, it's a very tough space out there, and especially with children who have probably gone through something difficult. Um, say something like maybe a CSA or something as sensitive as that. There's a lot that it takes for them to get equal to their counterparts in a lot of ways.
Okay, so then this brings us to another question from a viewer where it says, um, parents don't feel equal to a child. They feel like they're not able to create that equality within a household. And often children say, I can't open up to my parents. They'll never understand. How do you come to a middle ground between something like this? Is this something you've come across? And what would be your one main advice for somebody who's going through something like that?
I think one very, very simple thing that can be incorporated is autonomy or decision making power. Say something as simple as choosing a dress, choosing something to be brought at home, right? You need to buy an appliance, or you need to paint a wall, right? So having those family meetings, having like an incorporation of suggestions, that can create that space of equality for the person to realize, okay, your voice matters, you have a voice on the table. So it can start with that, and then that can be developed as a culture eventually.
Yeah, great advice. Maybe just starting small at home would really help. But that's speaking of autonomy at home and speaking about it having a rights-based language at home. But do you think if child sexual abuse actually happens, do you think they'll report it? Do you think people know where to report it?
Um, I don't think in the Indian context, still um a lot of cases get reported, considering the huge stigma associated with it, considering also how the legal process and all of that can probably or maybe apparently be more damaging to the child in a way as well. The societal pressure that comes in, right? um, we do see a lot of adult clients coming with a history of CSA, and a lot of clients with mental health issues have had a history of child sexual abuse. And these are usually within the house as well. It can be a neighbor, it can be somebody outside, but a lot of times it is also within the house, which is very scary in that sense. Um, we do have the POXO Act, which is quite stringent for this. And even as clinicians, we are supposed to report any kind of CSA when we see it in any child case, right? But I don't think a lot of cases do get reported unless and until there's a medical emergency involved, or the parents are really, I would say, legally and concerned about these things.
Of course. But to all our viewers and to the general public also, reporting is anonymous. You can report at multiple places. I would advise you to look it up. It's completely anonymous. So, Nikita, from your work experience and everything that you've seen, if we come across a child who has been sexually abused, do you think we should go talk to the child directly?
With the permission of the parents, of course, in that sense of and I think before getting into the topic, again, creating that safe space for the child is very, very important. I have worked with children before, and we use a lot of play therapy, we use a lot of games and a lot of indirect methods to elicit trauma. These could also include some psychological assessments wherein we show them pictures, and they're supposed to you know project a story onto them, and through the analysis of the story is also something we may find themes of any kind of abuse out there. And then once that space is created, and if the child is somebody who we can probably speak to, again going at their level and understanding what they went through, if somebody has touched them somewhere, if somebody has probably done something inappropriate. Again, this needs to be done very, very sensitively. This needs to be done very carefully, keeping the parents also involved at every step of the way. um, and at the same time, again, that thin line of ensuring that the child does not feel like, you know oh my god, this is the worst thing that has happened to me, wherein we kind of need to ensure that the perpetrator is punished, but the child is again very safe psychologically and physically going forward as well. Also depends on the
Yeah.
age of the child. People who are much more, yeah, in their teenage or adolescence are much more vocal, and probably they'll come and report it more. And I think the kind of awareness that's going on in schools, or even on, I would say, the content we view with respect to like shows and TV series, there's a lot of like talk about this. So, that becomes much more, I think kids are more aware these days. And, few awareness programs like maybe the good touch, bad touch, or even like what Sakshi does with, going to different schools and the target populations. I'm sure that you're doing a great job with the awareness with there.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, definitely keep in mind not to re-traumatize the child, not to make them go through even more traumatic situations than what they've been through. And it's very easy to say that when we talk to a child in a professional manner or in a safe space. But often we've noticed that, parents react in a very negative way to situations like this. Because they think it is for the best of the child. There's a lot of
Hmm.
strict, harsh punishment. They say, the child shouldn't go out anymore and things like that. Um, do you think there's something as a society that we can do to break this cycle where our reactions are very offbeat and they're not in tune with what is needed for the moment?
Mm, I think this that mentality, right? That of I think the victim mentality that we hold, where we need to sort of enclose the victim completely. I think that needs to sort of, be changed, where, the perpetrator is somebody that needs to be the focus rather than the person, the victim who needs to be enclosed or restricted on. So I think that mentality at the same time, again, helping the child also understand that this is an incident probably that's happened, but it does not define your entire self-worth or being as a whole, right? A lot of kids, or even by growing up, they sort of will have different body image related issues, or probably the psyche can go into a lot of different patterns altogether. So kind of being able to work through that, um and again, just I would say, like, not re-traumatizing the child by reminding them constantly or having them to speak about it constantly as well. Very important.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And I think we've spoken a lot about what a child might do, what a child should do, what parents might react as. But coming to the video that I sent you and to all our viewers, it's a video
Yeah.
called All I Want for Christmas. And it's where young Gattu, who is, I think, 5 or 6 years old, reveals to his sister that he's been sexually abused. So, Nikita, what do you think Didi would do next in that scenario?
um and I think that video is an excellent one, right, where the child, you see how in the video, it's very interesting how the child almost is very, sort of doesn't understand the gravity of what has happened. And the perpetrators also created that space for him to feel like, oh, he's doing something nice, or he's like, a really nice person to do what the favor is. Ideally, in this situation, the Didi should, inform the parents immediately. Under the POXO Act, there needs to be legal proceedings that need to happen, in such a case, because there is a, pattern with abusers. It's not just one child. There will be many who, if the person is left, loose, this person needs to be called out. Whoever this chacha, mama, uncle, whoever that person is, that person needs to be called out in such cases. So Didi needs to take some action, because I think it's very important that children, cannot advocate themselves, right? We need to be advocates for children in such situations.
I think that's the exact purpose of the Rakshan project also, where we believe that children are not
Hmm.
to be held responsible. It's the responsibility of an adult in their life to step forward and to advocate for the child, like you said. But it's very easy for us to say, whoever notices is supposed to report, we need to escalate it. But do you think in a family structure like that in India, would we even talk about it openly? Do you think
Mhm.
even Gattu's family would talk about it openly? Would they do something definitely about it?
Difficult to say. Depends again a lot on socioeconomic backgrounds, on cultural, on how aware these people are. I don't know if it's open, but I do have a lot of like clients telling me that they've told their parents or they've informed their parents about this, but it's usually come, it's responded in a very hushed tone, like, okay, shh, don't tell anybody about this, So that is what happens. Even though it gets reported to parents, nothing happens post that, And I think the worst kind of trauma is that if it's an incest situation, right? This is a person that the person encounters, at every step of the way, at functions, at family gatherings, to a point where this person wants to avoid family gatherings but just cannot, has to socialize, has to smile with this person. So again, that is very, very traumatic for any. So again, it's a
Okay, so it's
very
important
tricky
to
space,
break
but
that.
yes, there are some,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, but though there are families, let's be optimistic about that as well. There are families that would, take action or call out uh, somebody out. Stuff.
Okay, that's very good to hear. And I think you've given us some very good points, and it's been a very harsh topic to talk about so far. So let's jump into some rapid fires, some quick, fun questions for you.
Okay.
Um, so you have 10 seconds to
Okay.
think of each, and you can throw out the first word you think of. Yeah? Okay.
Okay.
What
All right.
animal do you adore?
I think any kind of baby animals, like kittens, puppies, cubs, any kind of baby animals. I think they're very cute
Okay.
to look at.
And one word to describe how rains make you feel.
Alive, fresh.
Okay. And your
Alive.
magic wish?
My magic wish. Um, I think this peace of mind to everybody. That's one wish I would have.
Great. And your one dream destination to live in.
To live in, I think a home that is safe and secure and just extremely healthy to live in. I think if we create that, that's a dream destination.
Okay, that's great
Physical
to hear.
and our
So
mind.
then
These two things.
physical and
Yeah.
mentally at peace. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So for some parting words, Nikita, what is your commitment to creating a safe space, and what would your advice as a clinical psychologist be to everybody in general on what is that one thing they can do to create a safe space?
I think listening, open-mindedness, and non-judgmental attitude. I think if these three things sort of are in place, a safe space can be created, and it requires a lot of work, to listen, to kind of be open-minded, to listen to what you're listening, and to kind of look at it from a non-judgmental space. Be it with children, be it with adults, be it with any population.
And those are the exact same qualities we're trying to build at the Ruption Project with everybody we work with, which is empathy, non-judgmental, being very kind. So I think you have echoed exactly everything we stand for. And thank you so much for joining us today, Nikita. And thank you to everybody watching for joining us on this safe space session. This is a campaign run by SBOX and the Ruption Project to build a world free of child sexual abuse and a world free of gender-based violence. And this is in partnership with the Ministry of Youth and Sports Affairs. So thank you so much, Nikita, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Vaishali, and great job with this project. And I hope you'll influence and impact many, many lives that you all are already doing. All the very best. And thank you so much for doing this with me today.
Yeah, thank
Take
you
care.
so much. Yeah, bye.